Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. So I just watched Dash and Lily on Netflix. Let's talk about it. So Dash and Lily is a Netflix series that was created by Joe Trace or Joe Trax. Not quite sure how to pronounce his name. I'll leave it over here for you guys. But this series was based off of a book called Dash and Lily's Book of Dares. Now, I haven't actually read this book, but I did watch the trailer for this series, I think a couple of weeks ago. And I have to say, it left quite the impression on me, so much so that I made it my business to find out when this was going to come out. And I still wasn't sure if I was going to review this series for you guys, but after having seen it last night, I have to say we need to dive into this one. It's just so heartwarming, it's so endearing, it's so warm, it's perfect for the holiday season. I would even say that it was released slightly too early for the holiday season, considering we're just coming off of Halloween and, you know, America's moving into Thanksgiving right now. I think if it had been released after Thanksgiving, it would have been the perfect time. Alas, it was released yesterday, and so I'm going to be reviewing this series for you guys today, and I am very excited to do so because right off the bat I can let you know that I had a very fun time with this one. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Before we do dive into my thoughts on this series, just a little friendly reminder that if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and turn on your notifications so that you can be told when I upload next. And also make sure you comment down below and let me know what your thoughts were on this series if you've managed to check it out already. And if you haven't, I hope that this video will convince you to do so, to get into the holiday spirit, because trust me, it 100% will. So without further ado, let's get into my thoughts on this one. So like I just said, this is a perfect little entry into Netflix's holiday/Christmas catalog, and it's exactly what we need right now. It's exactly what we need considering 2020, considering how 2020 has been. Okay, this is what we deserve. It's just so charming, it's just so lovely, it's cute, it's fun, it's nothing of real consequence, it's not, you know, substantial in that way. The story, of course, we've seen time and time again, like it's a rom-com essentially stretched out into a series, which by the way I very much love. I very much appreciate the fact that we actually got a series as opposed to a film, because in the case of a film, I feel like a lot of the characters, especially the ones surrounding the main characters, wouldn't have been done justice. I feel like they would have been so surface level. And to be fair, even in the series, in the 8 episodes that we get, it's not like we have substantial character development for each and every character on screen, but it's nice to see how well-rounded the world is, and it especially helps that you have several episodes to go through where that world just feels so much more fleshed out, it feels real. So I actually love the fact that this is a series, and I was surprised to see that it was, because from the trailer I had initially anticipated it being a film. But I'm glad to see that Netflix gave this story 8 20-ish minute episodes so that we could really dive into the story and its characters with a little bit more depth. Speaking of the characters themselves, I actually really enjoy them in this series as well. I like Lily and Dash. Like, they're so cute, and they're so cute together as well. They have great chemistry, which is really saying something because they're not actually on screen that much. Because of the nature of this premise where they're leaving each other notes in this notebook, they're not really on screen together much, and so you don't really get that interaction in person as much. When they do come together, you still see that chemistry there, you still see how they genuinely like each other, even when they are, you know, having that fight, which I guess would be a small criticism, that most of the time when we see them together, they are arguing because they're having that big, you know, breakdown moment where their relationship is on the rocks until we have that happily ever after. So for the majority of the screen time that we get with them together, they are kind of fighting and arguing, but once we get past that, you do see that chemistry there, you do like them as the two leads in the story. And that's just such a tricky thing to manage, because with characters like these where you have one who is so Christmassy, she's in love with the holidays, she loves celebrating Christmas and spreading cheer, that kind of character, it's so easy for that character to tip into the realm of annoying annoying as hell just unbearable to watch on screen. And I think the actress and the writers of this series do such a good job of balancing on that fine line between being happy-go-lucky and cheerful and just being excruciatingly annoying. Just so annoying. And on the flip side of that, you have the character of Dash, because naturally we have an opposites attract situation, and he is just so anti-holidays. You know, he's the epitome of the Grinch, basically. Like, he's a hardened teenager who's gone through quite a bit in life, and he's suffered, you know, some sort of trauma during the holidays because of what's happened between his parents in the past. So he's not a fan. Okay, he's really not a fan. And that also could have been tipped into the realm of annoying, because at the same time, you don't want someone who's constantly raining on your parade. And so the fact that you actually like these characters individually, and what's more, you actually root for them to come together in this series, I think that says a lot. It speaks to the great acting and it speaks to the great writing of the show. Again, the story itself isn't groundbreaking. Like, we're not talking about something that's just never been done before, like a pure innovative series or anything. At the end of the day, it's like a rom-com. It's, you know, we've seen it. We know what's going to happen. We know the steps, but it's in the execution. The execution is done very, very well for a show like this. What really speaks to the great writing and acting in this series is the fact that I also very much enjoyed the side characters, in particular Boomer. Boomer's an MVP of this show. Stellar, absolutely wonderful character. Okay, I loved his interactions with Dash. I thought they had a great friendship, and I also loved the fact that he called Dash out when he was being a dickhead, because he was. He was being a dickhead. And Boomer even said there's a difference between having social anxiety and, you know, self-isolating yourself versus being a dickhead. And I love the fact that he pointed that out. I love the fact that this series, this is just one example of what the show does throughout, which is kind of contradict or counteract, you know, common tropes that we see within this rom-com genre. And here we have the case where, yes, we do have yet another black best friend whose main purpose is to serve the main white lead, but he still stands up for himself. He still has a personality of his own. I feel like Boomer was just such a great character, and the actor himself had great presence on screen. He had an adorable smile, oh my goodness, I'm such a fan of that character. But as I said, the show does a very good job of kind of diverting from some of the common tropes that we see in this subgenre. Like I said, the best friend kind of has a bit more personality. He feels like more of a well-rounded character. Again, not substantially so, but considering the fact that we've seen this kind of character time and time again, I think he's a pretty good example of one. And also you have the fact that the villains of the story, or at least the people who are keeping the two leads apart, they're a bit more complex and a bit more nuanced that we would usually see. For example, you have the case of Dash's ex-girlfriend Sophia, who spits out like she has so much knowledge. Okay, she has so much wisdom to her. Okay, I don't know how merited that was, but she's a very intelligent young woman, and she was spitting out knowledge to Dash, saying, listen, the women that you have in your mind will never match up to the women who actually exist in the real world. When she said that, I was like, bars. She's a genius. Like, she knows exactly what she's talking about. She knows him so well. I will say that I wasn't the biggest fan of when she told him that she wanted to get back together with him at the end. I feel like that was kind of a setback for the character, especially because minutes later, like mere minutes later, she reveals that it's only because he feels comfortable to her, because she always has to move. But at the same time, I still think that character was just a little bit more nuanced, because she was intelligent. You can see why, he had fallen for her in the first place, which I feel like that's so lacking oftentimes in stories like this, where you have an ex who comes along and is just so evil, it's just so cruel. It's like, how did they get together in the like, literally, how did this happen in the first place? Here in this case, Sophia is actually a likable character, and yes, the story makes it clear that she and Dash aren't right for each other, but at the same time, you still understand how they got together in the first place. And also at the very end there, you do see that she ends up hanging out with Boomer, which is interesting. I kind of saw that coming, but I could have done without that one, to be honest. But still, I like the character of Sophia. And on the flip side of that, you have the character of, I can't remember his name, the blonde guy who traumatized Lily as a child by saying that she was so weird, which that was so real. That little arc that she had about how people had seen her as this weirdo all her life, and it had made her isolate herself, that was so well done. That was very relatable for me. So I very much appreciated that entire arc, and that sense of catharsis that she got from telling him exactly how she felt. Mwah, perfectly executed. Anyways, so that blonde guy, I also liked the fact that he wasn't outright a villain. Like, he actually genuinely felt bad about the way that he had treated her, or at least the way that it had impacted her life. And he also genuinely seemed to like her. It's just that, again, they just weren't suited for one another. But he wasn't evil. He wasn't this demonic being like we sometimes get in rom-coms, where there's just no nuance in the people keeping our two leads apart. With a lot of these side characters, we also got some great representation of marginalized groups in this series. I mean, we got the obligatory black best friend in the form of Boomer, but we also got Lily's gay brother, who's in a relationship with Benny at the beginning of the series, and he messes that up. I found that hilarious. He messes that up because Benny is going to Puerto Rico for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. My guy literally gave up on the whole relationship because he was going to be gone for 2 weeks. I found that hilarious, but that was also real because it seems as though he's been hurt in the past by a long distance relationship, so he still carries that with him, and that's what made him reluctant to dive in deeper with his relationship with Benny. So it was real, like it was an actual arc to give to this character. And yes, I still think that he could have gotten a bit more screen time on the show to really emphasize that arc, but I understand that the series isn't really about him, although it could be. We could have a follow-up. But no, it's not really about him. I still think they did a great job of communicating that character arc for him, because that was ridiculous but also relatable. And then we also have, you know, other members of the LGBTQ community. They didn't just stop at one letter. Imagine a series that didn't just stop at one letter. Good for them. Good for them. And yes, these characters don't have a substantial amount of screen time, but the fact that the whole world feels, again, so well rounded, it feels authentic to the world that we live in 2020, especially considering that the series is set in New York City. It feels very authentic to that environment, this melting pot of a city that is incredibly diverse and is full of people from all different backgrounds and all different walks of life. And of course, through the character of Lily herself, we do get some Asian representation. I mean, at the center of this story, we do essentially have an interracial couple, and we do have the presence of her Asian family, which I thought was great. Her grandfather and her great aunt, their dynamic is just perfect. Their dynamic is what I see me and my brother's dynamic being in like 80 years. You just tick so many boxes in terms of representation. Representation feels natural to that environment, and it's embedded in the story pretty well, even if you are conscious of it being deliberately there. And as a kind of final point, because this is a Christmas series, I kind of have to take into account the Christmasness of it all. Is it Christmassy enough? And yeah, absolutely, literally, absolutely. It's very Christmassy. It's perfect for the holidays. We even have Hanukkah being explored in this series. I mean, it's so good. It's literally perfect for this time of year, and especially on this year of our Lord 2020. Just what the doctor ordered. I love the music, the inclusion of music in this series, and the music wasn't just like the classic Christmas songs that we hear time and time again. There was also like a few teen pop stars popping up. Speaking of which, the Jonas Brothers just coming along for the ride. Loved it, absolutely loved it. Are you kidding me? The nostalgia was real. There were a lot of like teen pop star Christmas vibes going on in here, which I actually enjoyed a lot, because again, like I said, it feels very nostalgic to me, but at the same time it also feels appropriate for the holidays now in 2020. Now, if I was going to be analytical and throw in a few criticisms here and there, I would say that the story itself, whilst executed very well, isn't the most original. I do like the premise where they kind of meet each other and get to know each other through this textbook and share each other's deepest fears and their secrets and also their likes and their hates. Like, I like the fact that they got together in that way, although it did of course mean that there was less screen time of them together. At the same time, like I said, this is a teen rom-com story, so you can pretty much figure out what's going to happen from episode 1, but it's the journey that counts. It's the journey that counts, and I'm telling you, it's such a fun time. Anyways, I'm talking about criticisms here. My second criticism would be, even though it does try to avoid some of the tropes, like I said, that we often see in this subgenre, one thing that I didn't avoid, and this is like very specific, like this is very pedantic, but that trope of teenagers essentially being adults but with curfews. This show does that exact same thing where the teenagers, like, there is no real difference between what the teenagers are doing versus what an adult would do, except for the fact that an adult figure sometimes comes around to tell them off. Like, you have Dash and Lily drinking a lot throughout this series. Like, I don't know how old they're supposed to be on this show, but let me tell you that I know for a fact that America's drinking age is like 21, so they're not, they shouldn't be. Adults do tell them off, or at least not Dash's dad, but Lily's grandfather tells her off for doing that, but it's very like, you shouldn't have done that. Like, it's not, that's illegal. And also, they're in the bar. Like, she's actually in the bar. She's getting drunk and her adult friends are allowing her. She also ends up in a club and she stays out all night. And like, again, her grandfather tells her off for doing that. But she's like a child. Like, it's a pretty big deal. And then again, my mom was super strict when I was growing up, so it couldn't be me. It literally could not be me. Speaking of underage drinking, I couldn't help but notice when I was watching this series on Netflix that it had a U rating, which means suitable for all ages, which I firmly disagree with. I would have to see the manager on that one because I don't think, I don't quite think that this show warrants a U rating. I think it's a solid PG because it does have sexual references and it does have, like I said, copious underage drinking. So I have no idea how they got away with the U rating because to me it's like a solid PG. It's not quite a 12 or PG-13, but PG would definitely be the perfect rating in my opinion. So we're going to keep this one short and sweet because like I've already said time and time again, overall I had such a fun time with this show. It was surprisingly so heartwarming, so cheerful, so charming. I had a really great time seeing these two characters come together. Yes, it was quite predictable and I don't think even for a second that this story was innovative and groundbreaking even within the genre itself, but at the same time it was executed very well. I think the characters were very likable and a little bit more nuanced than we usually see in this genre, which I think is down to the fact that we had 8 episodes as opposed to just a 2-hour movie. So with all of that being said, I'm going to be giving Dash and Lily a 7.5 out of 10. So that's it from me. Now that I told you guys my thoughts on Dash and Lily, it's time for you guys to let me know what you thought of this show down in the comments below. Please be sure to subscribe to catch new videos coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it and I will see you in the next one. Bye!